Agenda item 30, Water Education Colorado, the annual scope of work, and we have Greg to introduce.
Good afternoon, Greg Johnson, CWCB staff. This is agenda item 30, the Water Education Colorado annual scope of work. Annually, the board reviews and typically approves the scope of work for Water Education Colorado. This is the organization formerly known as the Colorado Foundation for Water Education. So an exciting new name change along with a number of other programs and things going on this year. So you'll hear from Jayla Poppleton, their executive director of Water Education Colorado. So this annual appropriation is in the amount of $150,000, and it's in the form of an automatic non-reimbursable grant from the construction fund. It covers tasks that align with both organizations' missions. And this time around, for the last few years, it's covered 3 key overarching tasks that include number 1, organizational development, number 2, water education and leadership programs, and number 3, water information program support. So it is an action item. Staff does recommend approval of the scope of work. And I'm happy to hand things over to Jayla. She has been the director now for about a year and a half and just doing a wonderful job. So excited to hear more.
All right. Thank you, Greg. Jayla, welcome. Just state your name.
Thank you all for having me. Jayla Poppleton, Director of Water Education Colorado. And I get a kick out of the formerly known as. I feel a little bit like Prince somehow. But thank you all for making this time on our agenda. We do annually come before you to report on our last year's activities, to round out and close the loop on our current fiscal year's scope of work, and then to present to you a draft scope of work for your approval for the coming year. Just as a reminder of where this came from, in 2002, when the state legislature founded our organization, they built in the space funding mechanism, and at one point it comprised 100% of our budget. And I'm proud to say that this year it will be just 17% of a budget that's just over $850,000 for the year. So I do have a short presentation to highlight some of the activities that we've engaged in over the previous year, and some of those dovetail in with this year's coming scope of work. To go. Okay. So we have been really busy in the last couple weeks. We did just host our annual President's Reception. This is a time that we gather together our membership and community of supporters and honor leaders in our community. So this year we were proud to honor Tom Check with our Diane Hoppy Leadership Award for Lifetime Achievement in Water Education, as well as Joe Frank with our Emerging Leader Award. And we were proud to have Jim involved in a video that we shared that evening highlighting Joe's contributions on the South Platte River. So that was a great night. We raised just over $32,000 for our organization's work at that event. So that has continued to grow every year as well. And work the clicker. Just yesterday, I was down at Pueblo Reservoir for 2 days. We hosted the beginning of our 2018 Water Fluency Program. That program is now in its 4th year. It was introduced as a way to connect with people in leadership positions in communities around Colorado who are making decisions that relate to our water at the city and county level, in special districts, on ditch company boards, and to give them, help them get better acquainted with our water institutions, our water governance, water law. And so we were proud to have Kevin Ryan join us on Tuesday. Gary Barber, who's here with us now, presented yesterday. Just to give you a little frame of reference on where some of these folks are coming from. Gary had them do a show of hands on who was familiar with the roundtable process before he launched into an introduction of where that came from with Russ's bill in 2005. And we had just under half of the people in the room even knew that roundtables existed. And so we were able to give them a nice overview of that. And just a little later in the morning, we presented on the endangered fish recovery programs that you heard an update on earlier this morning. And no one in our class was aware of the existence of those programs. So we feel really proud to be moving the needle with these individuals who have an influence over local water issues and just can get a little better equipped to lead their communities with confidence. So one major thing that we did this year is we changed our name from Colorado Foundation for Water Education to Water Education Colorado. And it may seem like a subtle change, but the reason for that is really to heighten visibility for our organization, and in so doing, raise the level of awareness about our existence and the resources that we offer that people can take advantage of. We're really looking to build out that tent to expand farther beyond the water community and our core circle and to get out into our communities and to members of our public with water awareness and information to inform their decision making. So just a quick highlight of what the logo represents. If you haven't seen me talk about this before, it is an artistic interpretation of the state's 8 major river basins as defined by the roundtable process and this board's makeup, accepting the Metro roundtable, which is just built into our South Platte Basin. And there's also speech bubbles built into the logo as well to represent how our programs are advancing the dialogue around water in Colorado by connecting people with information, ideas, and with each other. So this year we've continued to produce our flagship publication, Headwaters Magazine, which I've been involved with for a very long time. And again, just keeping in the same vein of updating our look and feel, just to modernize and be relevant to Coloradans. We had a masthead that was on our cover since 2002 when Headwaters was first launched, and we have updated the design of the magazines. We're really proud of that. The 2 issues we've published so far this year are focusing on public lands in our water, as well as on alternative transfer methods that came out in the fall. We are working right now on an issue that will be produced in June on stream management planning. So some other work that we're doing, again, to advance that goal of expanding water awareness and understanding to a wider range of Coloradans is expanding our online content to meet people where they're at. And there's this nice little statistic from Floyd Cerulli, some of the polling that he did in 2016 that showed for Coloradans, our news media consumption is 68% online. And for the millennial generation, people ages 18 to 34, that number rises to 83%. And so our website had become really outdated and outmoded. It wasn't responsive on mobile devices. And so we're about 80% of the way through a website redevelopment project. That's a snapshot of our new homepage down at the bottom. But we will continue to also publish our Your Water Colorado blog. Last year, I think we had in the range of 50 blog posts, so an average of 1 a week, just allowing us to report on water issues that are taking place kind of in between that Headwaters Magazine publication cycle. Another exciting component of this, our staff has grown over the past year. Last year when I took over, our budget was really tight and we did not replace my former position. So we had 4 full-time staff. We're now up to 6. This is actually the biggest that we've ever been. And we have added a new digital content editor to manage the news reporting that we're going to be publishing on our website. And we're going to be making that content available to major media outlets to pick up. And we are really hopeful to develop partnerships with local publications all across the state to use our reporting to fill in the gaps in their own editorial cycle where they're just shorthanded to have someone really covering a water beat. And if any of you know, you may know this woman that we hired. Her name is Jerd Smith, and she was previously very engaged in water reporting during the 2002 drought. She worked for the Rocky Mountain News at that time. We're really proud to have her on our team. Another thing that we do is we host a Rocky Mountain community radio program in partnership with those stations. KGNU is our major partner, and the program's called Connecting the Drops, and we air 10 episodes each year, reaching up to 250 listeners, or 250,000 listeners, I apologize, all around the state. This is a coverage map that shows where those partners stations reach geographically. Some of our recent shows have covered forecasting for water availability based on snowpack, water conservation versus efficiency, that nuance in agriculture, alternative transfer methods, aquatic nuisance species, leak detection, and lead detection in schools. You all know about our tours. We've got a big one coming up. What I was doing outside is powwowing with Heather Dutton a little bit about our Rio Grande Basin tour, which is going to be hosted on June 11th and 12th out of Monte Vista. Next year, we plan to visit the South Platte Basin and to look at all the work that's being done there. Last year, we were in the Southwest, so we do rotate that from year to year through all the river basins of the state. It does take us about 8 years to get back to your basin. So we apologize if we haven't been there in a while. But we work really hard to have a statewide representation with our programs to be true to that mission and charge that we were given. We also host one-day tours. In the fall, we were in the Lower Arkansas Basin hosting an Innovating for Viability Land and Water tour, looking at, again, some of those agricultural to municipal water sharing agreements, some of the soil health work that's being done down there for water conservation and water quality purposes. We also host urban waters bike tours that are free to the public to attend, and we look at issues specific to urban waterways. We hike the bike paths that are accessible. Historically, we've always hosted those in the Denver area. We will be hosting another one along Sand Creek on June 5th and 6th. That's a typo. And then we're going to be heading to Fort Collins for our first year on the Pooter. Actually, two of my staff are leading that tour as we speak. And I'll be joining them tomorrow morning. So really excited to be expanding that program as well. And then we have in the scope of work for this coming year, you'll see a 5th anniversary flood tour in commemoration and a look back at the restoration work that's been done, the recovery funds and how they've been invested on the Front Range in the aftermath of the 2013 September floods. We also have hosted a wide variety of workshops, and then something new to us, we're calling it our Social Water Series. And the Social Water Series is meant to be more informal, engaging events that are free or very low cost, again, to the public, to get non-water professionals out to learn and engage in water issues in their watersheds. So we hosted a workshop in partnership with Colorado Springs Utilities in November with a regionalization focus. We also hosted our annual Climate and Colorado's Water Future workshop in March in Lakewood, and we visited the National Ice Core Laboratory. And then we had a rain barrel building workshop. Those have been really interesting. We offer people the opportunity to come out and transform an empty Coca-Cola syrup drum into a rain barrel that they can install in their own garden or backyard. And we've had a great showing of people. I would say at least 75 to 80% of the people who have turned out have never participated in one of our programs before. So it's been a really effective tool for outreach. We'll be going to Grand Junction on June 22nd for the second of those. And then we're hosting an event called Wagers for Watersheds. Again, public focused, looking at local elected officials and other community leaders in the Colorado Springs area. That's going to be the evening before our next session of our water fluency program. So we're kind of hosting those in conjunction with each other. But it's going to be a chance we're aiming to gather 100 people locally, including members of this year's water fluency class. There's 35 of them, to have a conversation around watersheds, risk to our watersheds. They're going to play a little game with dice, which is where the wagers came from, and then have a conversation around watershed protection efforts that are taking place in that watershed. We also plan to host events focusing on water reuse and corporate responsibility in the fall that are part of this series. We also host our annual Sustaining Colorado Watersheds Conference in Avon each year. That's coming up on October 9th to the 11th. We have anywhere from 275 to 300 people turn out for that. We partner with the Colorado Watershed Assembly and Colorado Riparian Association in putting on that conference. And it's grown every year. We love our location. We've got a 3-year contract with the Westin up there, but we are looking at whether we're going to need to move sites to accommodate a growing audience. And then I think most of you are familiar with our leadership programs. Water Leaders is in its 11th year. Over the past 10 years, we've graduated 143 people from that program. This is a picture on the right of our class from last year. This year's class just had its second session in Redstone at the end of last week. And we've actually got a member of the CWCB staff in this year's program, which is great. Rob Veal is part of that program. And Water Fluency, I talked a little bit about this year's class. That's a picture of the program last year. That's another one we've been rotating around the state. So we were on the west slope between Glenwood Springs and Grand Junction last spring. And this year we're on the southern Front Range, Pueblo, Colorado Springs, and Fountain. And then our Water Educator Network. This again is just showing you the schedule for the Water Fluency program. That's a picture of Gary presenting yesterday morning that I threw up. And the program design for that is we combine classroom training sessions with site visits and presentations from local professionals. And then there's a lot of homework in between, so reading assignments and online course content. Our Water Education Network is an outgrowth of the Water Education Task Force that was around in the late 2000s. And we currently have 65 members representing 50 organizations from around the state. The goal of this is really to increase the capacity of local water education efforts that are engaging with local communities by offering professional development trainings and opportunities to come together to coordinate, collaborate, and share resources. Have a little video here, but it's only 1 minute long. Do you guys want to see it? Right, I'm so sorry about that. Tested it this morning and it was working in my hotel room, but so that was just a little video that our intern this year, who is very interested in video, we put together covering our water festival coordinators gathering. We had 22 people who work on coordinating these festivals for school children and community members around the state come together, and that was just some interviews highlighting what they were getting out of the program. So this is something that is really benefiting from an investment from the Colorado Water Plan grant funds. We received a 3-year grant to grow this program. And so this wasn't previously staffed by a member of our team. We had a very, very part-time contract coordinator. But now we have Sophie Kirshenman, who is a full-time staff member of ours, spending half of her time growing this program. And we're really excited about that. Project wet trainings are another piece of that for, again, curriculum that can be taken to the K through 12 classroom level. And then I did want to highlight, we're going to be on the agenda during the next round of grant application review for a grant that we submitted to accomplish this action step from Chapter 9.5 of the Water Plan, to create a data-based water education plan. And a real reason that I bring that up now is it coordinates really nicely with our water educator network, because we feel that's really the group that's going to be most integral to implementing a plan such as this, and we want to work closely in leading that effort. So all of this work is about, awareness and understanding, in addition to engagement and informed decision making. And we're just really passionate about what we do and growing what we're able to achieve in coordination with all of you in the state. And I do have in your packet, looking at this coming year's scope of work, just a chart outlining where those dollars would be allocated, where we've proposed. Our board took a look at that at our board meeting last week and has approved it on our end. So we are seeking your approval today. And then I passed out during the lunch break a longer document that has a narrative explaining each of those components. But it's, as Greg mentioned and outlined, there's an organizational development component looking at membership program growth. Membership currently comprises about 15% of our revenue. And it's really important to us to know that we have that support from a broad base of stakeholders around the state. And so we do want to invest in continuing to grow that program. General public outreach, that's largely those social water events that I mentioned. The organizational management component is to, in conjunction with building the statewide water education plan, to update our own plan, which was last updated in 2014, as well as to conduct a financial audit for our organization, which we do once every 3 years. Then we've got the education and leadership program support for water leaders. The contribution that we get from the CWCB helps us keep tuition costs low. That program's tuition is currently $3,200 and would be almost double that to cover our costs without this support. There's a water educator network component, as well as support for the mini tours that we plan to offer in 2019. And then in terms of the water information program, I did want to highlight the specific pieces that we plan to cover in 2019. So again, we'll publish 3 issues of Headwaters Magazine. One will be focusing in the fall on water reuse. In the winter, we plan to focus on drought and climate in the wake of this year's water year. And then in the spring, we have kind of a TBD. Our program committee and board will work to identify that topic, but a strong contender at this moment is to look at the drought contingency planning that is taking place in the lower basin, and where are things at with that, and how will that affect the upper basin in Colorado. In conjunction with each issue of Headwaters, we also produce one episode of the Connecting the Drops radio program that dovetails on that same topic, as well as a series of blog posts and a webinar. And so we have that as a component to each of those topics as well. We also have a small piece for a Swazi focus to provide through our reporting channels some updates on how that effort continues to progress. And then with our Citizens Guide series, I didn't mention, last year we distributed 3,200 copies of our Citizens Guide library. We have 10 different topics in that library. And so we continue to work to maintain that inventory, as well as to update those guides with current content. And this year we have planned to produce a new guide. So we've never covered groundwater. We have a Citizens Guide to Denver Basin groundwater, but that's obviously a very geographically limited range. And so we're proposing to produce a new Citizens Guide that is focused on groundwater across Colorado, as well as a third edition update to our Colorado Water Quality Protection Guide. So with that, I'll open up to you for any questions that you have for me.
Thank you, Jayla. Any questions for Jayla? Director Trick.
Thank you, Jayla, and I continue to applaud you for all the good work that you do. And as a former graduate of water leaders, I really can't stress enough how important that program is and how valuable it is. So, and it's just great to see what you have done and taken the torch from Nicole Seltzer and continue to carry it on. So I commend you on that. And I did have a question about your workshops with the local governments and the planning bodies of the counties, cities, counties.
Okay. Water fluency program, is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I kind of was wondering where that falls in this.
Okay. Yeah, that's
future.
a great question. So in last year's scope of work, we did reduce the allocation from the CWCB. It was just $5,000. And that was as a way to keep this board and this organization involved in the program. But in my meeting with staff this year and looking at where the need was, the water fluency program has been so well received in our communities that we've had, it's our easiest program currently to fundraise for. So we felt that we didn't necessarily need the support from the CWCB. However, if that's something that you would rather we rework in and reduce an allocation somewhere else, we would be more than happy to do that, to just maintain that that kind of official level of involvement.
Okay. And yeah, I want to kind of just ask you in general how you thought that was going. Was it having an effect and working?
I definitely think so. We've received just tremendous feedback from the course participants. Last year, we had someone maybe about halfway through pull us aside and say, gosh, every new Coloradan should have to take this program. Just it's really an overview. We're covering a lot of ground pretty fast in 4 days. So they got a deep dive on water law and water administration from Justice Hobbs and Kevin just on Tuesday. And then yesterday was a big look at our water quality protection structures and also the recovery programs on the rivers. We'll be going into water financing and involving some of the CWCB staff in that in our next session. Just getting projects on the ground and then looking at Colorado Water for the future and some of the newer things that are identified as solutions in the water plan in our final session in July. But yeah, the program's been, I think, excellent. I think it was a real need. It's something that we'd love to grow. I think the demand is far beyond what we are currently able to meet with 35 people going through the course in one region each year. So I think in terms of a long-term goal, I'd love to see us offering 2 courses a year if we can build up to that level of staffing support.
Thank you.
Other questions for Jayla? Thanks, Jayla, for that overview. And I too enjoy the Citizens Guide and the Headwaters magazines are the things I look at the most, but I really enjoy the water leaders and having you send them out to us so we get to talk to them about agriculture. That's always a fun opportunity. I've been a shadower. I've had a couple people shadow me, and it's been a good opportunity to educate people that way. So it's been fun.
Or participating as a mentor in that way.
All right, thanks. So we have staff recommendation here, right? What is the group's pleasure? Jack, or Director Coble.
Chairman, I move to approve staff recommendation on agenda item 30.
Been moved by Director Goebel, seconded by Director Anderson, that we approve staff recommendation on agenda item 30. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Okay, water plan grants. Our overview, Lauren.
Of water plan grants for this year. I'm going to provide a little bit more context just for the new board members that we have. I know for the majority of you, this is like old hat by this point, but because this is the final round of our first year of the water plan grants program, I want to provide a little bit of context. So in 2017, the projects bill included $10 million for the board to make immediate progress on water plan implementation. And of that $10 million, we took $9 million of that and made it available for grants. The additional $1 million went to fund part of SWASI, which is of course also a really important part of the water plan. We further broke that $9 million down to the following buckets, is how we refer to them internally. We have $1 million available for agriculture, $3 million was available for storage, $2 million for water supply demand gap projects, $1 million for environment and recreation, $1 million for conservation, and then $1 million for innovation, education, and outreach. So the process that we developed for awarding funds in this first round involved a 2-year board meeting span, where after an initial review, the board would hear overviews of all of the projects from the different project managers for each of those categories, and would ask the board for direction and feedback that then they would take back to the office and communicate back with the applicants and further refine those applications if necessary. And then would bring the projects back at the following board meeting for final board approval, and that is where we are today. The application deadline for this final round was February. You heard an initial review of these projects in March. In this round, we received 29 applications requesting almost $7 million and matched by a significant amount. Each bucket head, as we like to call them, can provide more information about match if you would like. You will see in the board memo the total recommended funding amounts and balances in each bucket, but I want to just highlight that because I think we did overall a pretty good job in spending down each of those funding categories. There were some last minute changes that I'm going to ask Brent to handle in the agriculture bucket that led us to have a little bit more funding available than we were anticipating. In that bucket, we have about $116,000. On the storage category, we spent all of our $3 million. The supply demand gap bucket is left with about $53,000. We have $1,000 left in environment and recreation, about $2,000 left in conservation, and $100 left for innovation, education, and outreach. So I know we got really close. So with that, I'm going to ask each of the project managers, as we have done before, to come up and kind of give an overarching summary of what their category looks like. And if you have any questions about any of those projects, please feel free to ask. We will be asking for votes in block, but I understand there may be a board member who would like to recuse themselves, Jack, for one of those projects. So when that comes up, please just let us know and we'll vote on that project separately. So thank you. With that, I'll pass.
Right. Thank you, Lauren. Welcome, Ben.
Not Brent, is education and innovation. The first will be, or the last will be first will be last. Just presenting agenda item 32. I have 6 applications here. One of them actually the board heard in January of this year, and we had to pull it just because they had to shore up their in-kind funding, and now it's ready for final approval there. That's the One World, One Water Center application to activate Colorado's water plan with student-driven innovation. And as Lauren said, just have a little over $100 left in this account. But just briefly, just to recap these projects here, the first applicant, 32A, is a Greenway Foundation. And this is a Clean River Design Challenge, which gets students from 3 different campuses at Metro State University, Colorado School of Mines, and the University of Colorado at Denver to design a prototype that can clean out waterways within an urban setting. And the goal is for these designs to eventually make it to the market that can be actually used. And no changes on that one since the March board meeting. Moving on to 32B, this is the applicant is the Water Education Colorado, and they are, this is to build a statewide strategic water education action plan, which will serve as a playbook for Colorado, coordinating statewide and basin-wide water education activities over the next 3 to 5 years. And they're also going to do an internal strategic plan for Water Education Colorado. Again, no changes on that since the last board meeting. 32C, the applicant is a left-hand watershed oversight group. And this project is developing a community science program to engage the Left-Hand Creek watershed community in watershed stewardship through citizen science. And so they're going to be using tools and other platforms to collect, manage, and share data and just be better stewards of their watershed. And this is going to develop, the goal is to make this repeatable and just kind of like a toolbox to use in other watersheds across the state. 32D, the applicant is the Denver South Transportation Management Association. And this is that pilot project that's going to use infrared thermal imaging system in a suburban roadway landscape. And it's actually going to be at the southeastern part of I-25 and Arapahoe Road. And so they're going to be just collecting data, analyzing that on the stress of those plants in that setting with the intent of potentially reducing water usage in those settings. 32E, the applicant is the Sangre de Cristo Acequia Association, preserving the Hispano water culture curriculum. And this is developing a water education curriculum that walks through the history of the Acequia water distribution system from its past through current and how it coincides with current Colorado water law. And this is going to be made available to teachers statewide as an easily downloadable format, and also be available at the Colorado History Museum. But this involves both classroom sections and then also field trips. And then finally, 32F is the One World, One Water Center application that activates Colorado's water plan. Like I said before, they have secured their in-kind match, and it's just going to be in-kind with the staff there. This did change initially back in actually November of last year. In January, the ask was $40,000. That has been reduced to $35,000. This is going to be just creating a create an atmosphere at Metro State campus as well as CU Boulder, as they bring in people from outside of the water disciplines to come up with like a contest between different departments on that campus to meet challenges that have that are in the water plan, and but just get a bunch of people, a bunch of students rather, that don't see themselves in the water plan to actually see themselves in the water plan, as water connects us all, and make that cross-campus contest something that can help us what does Tom Check call it? Tom Check says a living laboratory at these university campuses. That's what he calls it. So this is actually coincides with the water efficiency grant, actually, with a Colorado water collaboratory. That's a tongue twister. But that's what that does. So any questions folks have, I'll be happy to answer them. We do have 2 applicants in the audience, actually. Jayla Poppleton has stuck around. If you have any questions on her grant application, then Bob Howie from Denver South Transportation Management Association is here as well. If there's any questions on his on 32D.
Any questions for Ben? Would any of our 2 applicants, Jayla or Bob, want to address the board since you made the trip? Step up to the mic and for the record, state your name.
Hi, my name is Bob Howie, and I appreciate consideration of the grant request. We're working with Denver South Transportation Management Association and deploying a technology, infrared sensor technology into an urban landscape setting. And we think it's as a device to help decide when plant material needs to be watered and when it doesn't need to be watered. So we think it's a pretty exciting thing. It just has, it's out there, but it needs to move into the cities, into the urban. And we're in a pretty high visibility location. CDOT is very involved and interested in our project, as well as the Associated Landscape Contractors of Colorado. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Oh, Jayla, would you like to?
Jayla Poppleton again with Water Education Colorado. Just to add, with our grant application, we think the timing is really right for engaging and building the statewide plan because of a few other efforts that are underway or about to conclude, and that includes the water education asset map that the One World, One Water Center at Metro State University has been working on for the past year. I believe that they plan to conclude that project soon-ish, maybe late July. And that project is identifying gaps in water education around Colorado that we think this plan could look at how we can help close. And then another thing I want to emphasize around it, just in conversations we've had with local partners, including our PEPO liaisons around the state, is that it's not our intention to come in and try to tell people who are working locally in water education what they should do differently. We just want to look at how we can better coordinate and collectively use our resources and amplify those efforts with local partners. Thank you. And also, I should note, Devin Buckles is also here with the Greenway Foundation, and she's one of our Water Leaders graduates, and so I just wanted to call her out if she wanted to say anything.
Devin, do you want to address the board?
I was planning just to sit there and be quiet today because I gave everybody my spiel yesterday, but thanks for another opportunity. So thank you for considering the Clean River Design Challenge grant. As you saw yesterday, we have some tremendous results coming out of that program, and I do believe that technology and innovation are going to make a huge difference in the implementation of the water plan and our ability to achieve the goals that are set out by you all in that plan. So thanks again for an opportunity to be here, and thanks for your consideration.
Any questions for Devin? Okay. Any questions for Ben? Director Wells?
If there are no further questions or discussion, I would move approval of the water plan grants listed in item 32.
All right. It's been moved by Director Wells, second by Director Gallagher, that we approve water plan grants 32A through F. And as Assistant Director Aris said, we're going to do these in a block, but if there is one that you must recuse yourself from, let us know and we'll pull that one out. So we'll go ahead here. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Ben. Agenda item 33, agriculture.
Good afternoon, board members. Brent Newman, Interstate Federal and Water Information Section. I'll be presenting part of agenda item 33 today, and for the third time in 2 days, I'm going to introduce you guys to Alex Funk, our Agricultural Water Resources Specialist. Alex is going to be managing, as Director Mitchell and Craig both mentioned, our alternative transfer methods and water plan ag viability grant programs. This is a new approach for the agency, and we think it makes a lot of sense. It will result in a more efficient ag viability program, as well as lead to more creative funding packages and ways to leverage other funding opportunities. Alex has already jumped in with both feet. He's been attending meetings of the Arkansas Water Quality Working Group, the Colorado Ag Water Alliance board meeting recently, the Gunnison Roundtable, and he's been working very closely with Craig to sort of explore the history of the ATM program and some of the future opportunities that program could have. With that said, I'm going to go on a very brief tangent. Director Mitchell shared the org chart yesterday and kind of highlighted some of the positions in the Interstate Federal and Water Information section that we've recently filled or moved folks around in. And I'm up here today trying to restrain my glee at having these positions filled. And not only to have them filled, but filled with such capable and efficient people who have already plugged into that programming and have hit the road, jumped in head first into the programs they're managing. So if you haven't already come across Alex or Jojo Law, who will be taking over some of the recovery programs, or Brian McPherson, who's going to be our DSS manager, you will soon out in the field or in our offices because they're doing a fantastic job. And I could also stand up here all day and talk about the amazing work and the continued excellence you guys have seen as demonstrated over the past couple of days and always by Michelle Garrison, Carly Brown, Carolyn Kemp, and our newly promoted court jester, Eric Sky. So with that tangent ended, I want to, Director Riss mentioned some of the challenges we had this year with the Ag Viability Funding category, and they weren't challenges because they were negatives. We just had so many people come in for funds, and building a creative and collaborative funding package around a comprehensive ag project can be very difficult. And we had a lot of different elements at play, different federal funding programs, different local funding cost shares. So we have money left in the ag viability account, but it's only because we had a couple of projects who, one was not chosen for funding by the Bureau of Reclamation. So that made their funding package kind of disintegrate, at least for a year or two. We're going to help them get back on their feet for the next funding opportunity announcement. And then also one project in the Colorado Main Stem that is going to be working with their local county and town authorities to incorporate their project into a countywide efficiency project. So they'll be back for that money. But as for now, it's going to sit in the account for a little while longer. With all that said, I'm happy to pass the torch along of the Water Plant Ag Viability Program to Alex for today's final approval of these grants, which you all heard for the first time back in March.
Hi, members of the board, Alex Funk, CWCB staff. Today I'll be presenting on 4 items, 33A through D. Eric might pop up for C. Or do you want me to? Okay. And so I might like tag team that one. So our first one up today, 33A, is from the Fire Mountain Canal and Reservoir Company, and that is for the Automation, Remote Monitoring, and SCADA to Improve System Efficiency project. These funds would go towards the installation of real-time telemetry data and supervisory control and data acquisition telemetry for the purposes of preserving existing water supplies and storage at Peonia Reservoir and associated canal works, such that they can help improve agricultural irrigation water delivery and safety. Staff recommends support based on benefits to producers in the region through the ability to preserve water supply for late season demands and furthering Colorado Water Plan and Gunnison BIP goals to promote water efficiency and maximizing existing supplies. And as we touched on this morning, this region also is experiencing some of the effects of the drought this year, and this project will help extend supplies or maximize existing supplies, so helping kind of enhance drought resiliency in the region as well. We also have Steve Fletcher in the office today from Fire Mountain Canal and Reservoir Company, so if there are any questions on that particular grant, he is available to answer those. 33B is the Florida Canal Structure Rehabilitation Project, and this grant is, the application is from the Florida Consolidated Ditch Company for the rehabilitation of a low-head dam. This project, basically these funds would go to rehabilitating a current structure to both enhance fish and wildlife habitat, improving aging infrastructure to firm up ag irrigation supply, and supporting nearby recreational opportunities. Staff recommends approval of this project based on, the water plan's approval of multiple purpose projects that provide multiple benefits, and as well as a consideration for ag benefits and environmental and recreational uses as well on the Florida River. And today, Pete Foster is here to talk about that project if there are any questions. 33 33C. Eric, do you want to talk about it, or I can do an overview? 33C is from the San Luis Valley Water Conservancy District and is the Rio Grande Basin Soil Moisture Pilot Project. Funds through the grant will go to basically for the purchase and lease of soil moisture monitoring equipment in an effort to make that equipment available to farmers in the region to help improve irrigation management and reduce water use. Let's see. There will be at least 10 participating projects and beginning in the summer with soil mapping and probe deployment in 2018 and 19, and then final reporting in mid-2020. And I don't believe anyone's here today on that, but I'm sure Eric can handle any questions that the board may have on that project. And finally, 33D is an application from the Arkansas River Watershed Collaborative, and this is for the Arkansas Basin Project Implementation Guide to Watershed Health. As many of you know, the lower Ark and the entire basin is dealing with some pretty serious water quality issues, and there's been a lot of research and other studies done on that over the years. And a main goal of this study or this project will be kind of go out and synthesize a lot of that research and bring it together into one useful guiding document that could then be used to sort of identify priority areas for best management practices and kind of like where to direct funds to help address some of those water quality issues that several organizations and working groups are actively trying to address. And no one's here. I think there are a few people in the audience that can speak to that project today that I can maybe pull up here, but I'm also happy to answer any questions about that project as well, since I'll be, as Brent mentioned, serving on that, the work group that will be kind of handling this plan. So with that, I'll leave it to any questions the board may have for myself and the applicants that are here today.
Any questions for Alex from the board? All right. Any of the applicants like to come up and address the board? You've come a distance. we always like to hear from applicants. If you would like, Steve or Pete. Steve and Pete.
Butcher and Fire Mountain Canal and Reservoir Company. Yeah, first off, appreciate the opportunity to come before you. And I think this is a very good project that we're trying to put in for. It's kind of the backbone to the SCADA system we got going. Plus, Paonia Reservoir is situated where it's the confluence and the Muddy Creek and the Anthracite Creek are right below the dam itself. And so by linking together the stream flow gauges, we're able to if something happens up the Anthracite Basin, a storm event, we can close down the reservoir gates on Muddy Creek, whereas we can use less stored water when a storm event's actually supplying the North Fork for the senior and us water users on the river itself. So,
thank you, Steve. Any questions for Steve? Thanks for coming. Pete, state your name and who you're with.
Oster with Right Water Engineers, Consolidated Ditch Companies. Thank you very much for your consideration for our grant application. We really appreciate your assistance with this project. It's an interesting project. We're taking a diversion structure that was built in the early 1900s and has fallen apart, and we're working with the Nature Conservancy and Colorado Parks and Wildlife and the Trout Unlimited, and putting together a habitat fish-friendly diversion structure and looking at a potential in-stream flow donation with this project. So we're very excited about it. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Pete. Any questions for Pete? All right. Thank you. We're going to do these one at a time because Director Hawkins must recuse herself from 33B, Director Dutton from 33C, and Director Goebel from 33D. So we're going to look at 33A right here. Director Wells.
Without further discussion, I would move approval of the water plan grant in item 33A.
Right. It's been moved by Director Wells, seconded by Director Anderson, that we approve staff recommendation on item 33A. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, 33B,
Might as well
Director
just
Wells.
go. I would like to move approval of the water plan grant recommended in item 33B to Florida Consolidated Ditch Company.
And moved by Director Wells, seconded by Director Goebel, that we approve staff recommendation on agenda item 33B. Is there any discussion? Welcome. Go ahead.
And I'm sorry, I wanted to just clarify, I'm not sure I need to recuse myself from this vote. I just wanted to make sure that the record reflected that the Nature Conservancy is supporting and providing cash match on this project near my employer. And I would leave it up to the board whether I need to recuse myself or not.
No. Okay. It's a consensus up here that you don't have to, so you can vote with us if you like. All right. All right. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. 33C.
Now I would like to move approval of the water plan grant for the San Luis Valley Water Conservancy District in item 33C.
All right. So it's been moved by Director Wells, second by Director Anderson, that we approve staff recommendation on agenda item 33C. Director Dutton.
I would like to make or state for the record that the San Luis Valley Water Conservancy District is my employer, so I'll be recusing myself. And the district did send someone, me. So if you have any questions, I can answer it. This is a good project and we're excited about it. And so I'd love to talk to you about it if you'd like now or sometime other.
Anybody have any questions for Director Dutton on this project? All right. Well, thank you, Director Dutton. It's been moved and seconded that we approve staff recommendation on agenda item 33C. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Let the record show that Director Dutton recused herself from the vote.
And now I would like to move approval of the water plan grant to the Arkansas River Watershed Collaborative in item 33D.
All right. It's been moved by Director Wells, seconded by Director Dutton, that we approve staff recommendation on agenda item 33D. Director Goebel.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to state for the record that I'm employed by the Lower Arkansas Valley Water Conservancy District, which is a participant in this project, and will recuse myself from discussion and voting on this agenda item.
Thank you, Director Goebel. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Let the record show that Director Goebel recused himself from the vote. All right. Agenda item 34. Anna Moss.
Good afternoon, Anna Moss, CWCB staff for the record. So agenda item 34 is the storage category of the water plan grants, and this is a little bit unique in the staff recommendation. I'm really only looking for an authorization to continue working on a previously approved grant. And part of this is because Rachel yesterday presented the Ogilvy Irrigation and Land Company's grant request for the dredging project. And so I'll back up and say that at the March 3rd round of water plan grants, we had about $1.4 million left in the storage category, which was definitely less than the ask for on all the grants that came through, but we ultimately ended up just recommending one for further consideration. And so yesterday, I know Director Randall had a question about whether we took that one out of order. And in part, it is the only one out of that particular pot of money. So it felt, I don't know, it was still a little bit goofy, but because it was sort of a standalone, we felt it was appropriate to do that. So I want to make sure to address that. Anyway, so what I wanted to really do is update you on one of the grants from the very first round. It was for, I guess, the new board members who weren't there for that, an $804,000 grant request from the city of Walsenburg to rehab and rehabilitate an enlarged City Lake Dam. And this has been an important project on the dam safety side of things. It's been restricted for a while, and it's been on their list to get off that restricted list for a while. And then when the city looked at it, they said, well, if we're going to tear this down and rebuild it, why don't we enlarge at the same time? And so that all seemed like a really positive thing. It was going to add 120 acre feet of storage, which is helping move the water plan forward. So we supported that at the time, but there was some local concerns about the project. And so to address those, we added a condition on the approval that said that the city and some of the other entities in the region needed to come to an agreement as to how that enlarged space would be used in the future. And we put a deadline on that of March 15th of this year. And I will say that they didn't quite meet the March 15th deadline. They executed that on May 2nd, but they did execute it. I've got a copy of that. It looked good to me. So I want your approval to continue to move forward with that particular grant.
Questions for Director Wells?
I move the staff recommendation in item 34B to accept the IGA as satisfying the condition that we previously applied.
Moved by Director Wells, second by Director Anderson, that we approve staff recommendation on agenda item 34B. Is there any further discussion? Director Goebel.
Chairman, and I just want to point out to the board all of the hard work that Anna did on this. This was kind of a long haul getting that IGA accomplished, and she just went above and beyond to get this one done. So I really appreciate all of her help.
Thank you.
Other discussion? All right, seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, agenda item 35.
And item 35, Greg Johnson, CWCB staff. This is the supply and demand gap projects. This was somewhat of a unique bucket for us. This next year for the projects bill, this one's actually being combined with the storage bucket to make sure that it's just a little more clear. There was some ambiguity surrounding this particular bucket of funds. So this fund balance, if the two projects today are approved per staff recommendation, would be remaining at $52,949. Presumably that amount of money may roll over then into the storage sector for the next fiscal year. So there are two projects, no changes since the last presentation at the March board meeting. We were allocated to this particular funding $2 million from the projects bill last year. And the two applications today total $312,500. So the first one for 35A is the town of Castle Rock. And this is for the Plum Creek Water Purification Facility Advanced Treatment Project. The request in the amount of $200,000, which is about 11% of the project cost. Staff does recommend the full amount for $200,000. This project would really help meet the reuse goals of Castle Rock. So Castle Rock is to date been very reliant on Denver Basin groundwater to the tune of about 85% of their supply come from Denver Basin. They really hope to shift that so that in the year 2050, about 75% of their supplies would actually be renewable supplies, renewable water. And this project would significantly enhance and expand their treatment capacity to really get there to really maximize their reusable supplies. The second project we have is 35B. This is the Pikes Peak Regional Water Authority with a request for $112,500. This is for the El Paso County groundwater depletions project implementation strategies to meet the supply and demand gap. So this project, again, for $112,500, staff does recommend approval of the full amount. This project also dealing with groundwater issues, this time in the El Paso County area, of course, with the Denver Basin and Upper Black Squirrel aquifers, is really looking at a bunch of different options to meet their needs long term. Things that include regionalization with the number of the entities that are there, really tying closely into the El Paso County Water Master Plan that is ongoing and I believe wrapping up shortly, as well as the El Paso County Comprehensive Plan that will likely ultimately involve land use code changes as well. So this project looks at a number of different things to help meet those needs long term, including aquifer storage and recovery in the Upper Black Squirrel Aquifer. So staff does support funding for both these projects.
Any questions for Greg?
Sorry, I'm remiss. I forgot to mention, we do have Kip Peterson from Pikes Peak Regional Water Authority in the audience, as well as Gary Barber, who has also been assisting with the project. To say anything.
Gary or Kip, would you like to come up and address the board? State your name and who you're with.
Good afternoon. I'm Kip Peterson, General Manager, Denali Water and Sanitation District. But I also have the privilege of being the current president of the Pikes Peak Regional Water Authority. As part of this project, I sit on the El Paso County Steering Committee for the Water Master Plan. I was involved in the 2008 aquifer storage study done by the Colorado Geological Survey on storage in the Upper Black Squirrel. I think this, and where I work, we sit right in the middle of the 25,000 acre foot gap that's been identified. Our district has been working very hard and diligently to remove ourselves from the Denver Basin by finding alternative sources of water. This project is kind of the culmination of a lot of things that have been going on over the last decade almost. And I want to express our appreciation on the Water Authority for the past funding and hopefully for this present funding. And if any technical questions come up, I'm going to pull Gary up here.
Have any questions for Kip or Gary? All right.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming. Director Goebel.
Chairman, if there's no further questions, I move to approve staff recommendation on agenda item 35.
Moved by Director Goebel, second by Director Anderson, that we approve staff recommendation on agenda items 35A and B. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, agenda item 36, Linda.
Bassey with the Stream and Lake Protection Section. Agenda item 36 is the environmental and recreational grant category. And staff presented the items listed on the first page of your memo, the projects for initial consideration in March. And the 4 applications total $203,714, leaving a balance in our bucket of $1,002. So we got it right down pretty close. So I will walk through these projects one by one. 36A is an application by Mountain Studies Institute for the Animas River Removal and Replacement of Invasive Phreatophytes project for $48,714. MSI is a nonprofit research and education institution in Southwest Colorado, and this funding will support their work with private landowners, businesses, the city of Durango, and the Southern Ute Indian tribe on removing and replacing invasive phreatophytes on approximately 670 acres. And that will include work done on city property, parcels within the reservation, and with various landowners, and it will involve removing Russian olive and other invasive phreatophytes, planting appropriate riparian vegetation along riparian corridors, and monitoring for resprout of invasive species. 36B is an application from the Rio Grande Watershed Emergency Action Coordination Team, affectionately known as REACT. And their project is the Upper Rio Grande Environmental Restoration and Recreation Infrastructure Improvements Project. This application is for $55,000, and the funding would assist in constructing a new boat ramp, installing fencing, and transplanting willows to protect and restore channel banks and riparian areas from trampling and overgrazing, and repairing trails and creating hardened access points for stock to improve water quality by reducing erosion. All 3 of these will address impacts from heavy recreational use along creeks, and so it will improve health of the creek and will make the recreational opportunities better by having better places to get into the river. And the locations of those are the Rio Grande Campground, the 30-mile dispersed stock unloading area, and the Ute Creek Trailhead. Travis Smith, who is the chair of REACT, is here in the audience if you have questions for him. And I don't know if you want to wait until, do you want to right now? Okay. Or go through all of them and then, okay. 36C is an application from the city of Steamboat Springs for the Fish Creek Critical Community Watershed Wildfire Protection Plan. None of these have short names. This application is for $50,000. The Fish Creek Basin is a really important water source for the city and the district, And it also provides key habitat for the mountain whitefish, which is one of the few remaining native fish species in the upper Yampa Basin. Fish Creek provides thermal refuge for those whitefish during late season low flows in the Yampa. So the plan will be developed through a stakeholder process and will define and prioritize site-specific measures in the watershed and at the water treatment plant to implement before, during, and after a wildfire to protect the watershed and to protect critical drinking water supply and infrastructure. 36D is an application from the Florida Consolidated Ditch Company for the Florida Canal Diversion Structure Rehabilitation Project for $50,000. You just heard about this project in the ag category. The funding from this bucket would be used for final engineering, engineering services during bidding, and partial engineering services during construction. And this is a multi-purpose project. It will both improve the stability and function of the diversion structure, but it will also facilitate fish passage, and that will also improve fish connectivity on the Florida River, increasing genetic diversity and access to spawning habitat within the watershed. Colorado Parks and Wildlife is involved in this project. They've provided technical input on the engineering design for the fish passage component of the project, and water deliveries through this canal support aquatic and terrestrial wildlife and wildlife recreational opportunities at the Pastorius Reservoir State Wildlife Area. Again, Pete Foster is here in the audience if you have questions about those aspects of the project. So I'll step aside so that people...
Any questions for Linda first? No? Okay. Travis, would you like to? Of course you would. Come on. Yeah, that's right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. I recognize it's the afternoon on the second day of a CWCB meeting. It's a different perspective from the back of the room. Thank you for your service to the state of Colorado. Linda did a great job in describing the project. I just want to thank you on behalf of REACT of your support in the past. This project is another example of REACT initiating, drawing partners together, bringing some money, the capacity to be able to facilitate the grant. And with that, I will keep my comments brief, but thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any questions?
Questions for former Director Smith? All right. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Like to add if he's still here? Okay. All right.
So with that, staff recommends that the board approve the projects and activities for funding in the amounts listed on the first page of your memo. And I don't know if you're taking them all at once or one at a time, but
we'll try to take them all at once. I think Director Hawkins may have something to say.
Thank you, Chairman, and I wanted to repeat for the record item 36D. It is the same project where the Nature Conservancy is supporting and did a cash match to the project, and unless the board would like to use myself, I will.
Thank you. I think we're all in agreement that you can vote. So,
thank you.
All right. Any other? Director Dutt.
I would just like to note for the record that I am on the board of REACT, but I am a volunteer board member and have no personal benefit from this project. I just wanted to let you guys know that. So unless there's other questions or conversation, I would move staff recommendation for item 36A through D.
It's been moved by Director Dutton, second by Director Gallagher, that we approve staff recommendation on agenda item 36A through D. Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Agenda item 37, Kevin.
37. Kevin Reedy, Water Supply Planning Section. For the record, I'm almost there, folks. 37A through G are the water plan grants for the water conservation land use planning grant bucket. We've got 7 grants in this one. They total of $743,254. with what Lauren said, we have a little more than $2,000 left over. So we're beating the bushes late on. So we got it going pretty well. So I'll just go through these quickly. And you've seen these before at the last board meeting. And the first one is the Babbitt Center for Land and Water Policy, Getchus Wilkinson Center for Natural Resources, Energy and Environment. Guidance to covered entities for land use planning components of water efficiency plans. Yeah, that's a long title. So basically what this is creating an addendum for our water efficiency plan guidance document. So we created a few years ago. And this stems out of Senate Bill 2015-008 that required the CWCB and DOLA, with assistance from DOLA, to add an element to water conservation plans that dealt with land use planning, and specifically addition of evaluation of best management practices for water demand management that may be implemented through land use planning efforts. And so as we've been embarking on this whole land use water nexus idea in the last couple of years, this has finally kind of come around to saying, well, we've been working with people one-on-one on these things with our plans, but I wanted to have something that was a little more solid, a little more official in our guidance documents. And so this stemmed from an Ann Castle, who works for the Getchus Wilkinson Center, asked if this would be of value. And I said, yeah, of course. And so they're working on that. This grant is for $35,000. So there we go for that one. So 37B is Green Mountain Water and Sanitation District, and they are creating a customer engagement and analytics tool, which basically means they're creating a customer and utility side platform for interaction with their customers using their smart meter network. They are and actually a master meter account through Denver Water, but they handle everything past those master meters. So they're working on this to try to accumulate better data on their demand management aspects in relation to their customers, and also then push out information back to their customers. And this is a really exciting trend that we've seen the last few years with smart metering really happening a lot more now, and creating these software platforms that really kind of engage the customer much more and really bring them in, whereas before they would maybe get something once a month on a bill that they might not even read, whereas this has real-time applications where they can assess leaks. They can tell customers about leaks. They can push information out. They can engage them in other projects. And this grant is for $72,000. Next, 37C, the Meadows Neighborhood Company. And I'd like to say that Bob Howie, who came up here before, he's actually as part of this grant as well. He's an irrigation specialist, and he works on a lot of projects like this, like he said before. But this is the targeted integrated irrigation efficiency improvements and management and turf conversion for reduced water use. Yes, we could probably come up with a good acronym for that one, but this is for $66,700. And what they're going to do is they're going to work with this very large neighborhood association, homeowners association in Castle Rock, and really work on irrigation efficiencies, replacing irrigation equipment, and also replacing turf in very underused areas with very much lower water landscape plants. And the great thing about this is, though, they're going to really do it before and after. They're going to really monitor what they were using before, and they've got good stats on that. And then show the reduction. They're going to actually do all the work to show that it's almost like a kind of a large scale pilot project, but very controlled environment in an HOA. And this is one of the larger water users for the town of Castle Rock. So they're very engaged in this as well. And I think it's going to be a good thing. So we can have Bob come up here if you have any questions about the specifics on this project. 37D. This is from the Mile High Youth Corps, and it's a water and energy conservation program for $99,964. And what they're going to do is they work with a lot of lower income households. And as you saw from the presentation yesterday, they employ a lot of lower income kids in these projects. And, I have to attest too that I was actually at one point a youth conservation corps crew leader for a year, and that was a spectacular year. It was really good. So it was rough sometimes, but it was good. So I really believe in these kind of organizations, and what they're going to do is be working with the indoor fixtures in a lot of houses, replacing them with very high efficiency fixtures, even down to looking at ultra high efficiency toilets of 0.8 gallons per flush. So that's about as far as they're thinking that we can get down to. And so I'm looking at Jim. So, but anyway, this is 99,964, and we can, if you have any questions about that, I can help you with that. 37E, Sonoran Institute, Colorado Growing Water Smart, $398,000. This is a continuation of a program that I was able to attend. I've been working with these folks a lot over the last couple of years, and was able to attend this training last September and up in Keystone. And I was kind of a floating technical advisor for the whole thing, but it was a lot of fun. And these communities came in, they had to apply through an RFP process and say, this is why we want to do it. They had to bring a team. They had to bring land use planners, water planners, elected officials together and sit for 2.5 days and really hammer out an action plan of how they were going to integrate these things together better in their planning spheres. And I saw I know we've got about out of the 6, I think there's about 4 action plans that are already taking off the ground from last September. And Sonoran also does provide technical assistance along with that as they get them off the ground. So, and they're hoping to do 3 more trainings this September, next spring, and then the next fall in Colorado, and hopefully hit 24 communities, representing about 1.2 million Coloradans. This goes directly towards the 75% goal for Coloradans living in communities that integrate these 2 planning spheres, and so it's pretty solid. And we've this actually stems out of the Senate Bill 15008 as well, just like the other water efficiency plan element. This it said, hey, CWC DOLA, you shall be doing these trainings. And so this is one way we are able to do this. We can leverage the grant money and matching money and get these trainings and try to reach those populations, because it's very hard for 1 or 2 people to do all these trainings across the state. So, and we've also talked about kind of expanding this idea and trying to get different levels of trainings across more of a continuum, so that they're not all these very intense couple-day trainings, but maybe we can do some other things that fill it in. So those are in the works as well. Okay, so 37F, Western Resource Advocates, best practices for water meter retrofit projects financed by state performance contracts in Colorado. This was an interesting one because I didn't know that this legislation had passed in 2017, but I guess you couldn't do performance contracting for water meters. You could do it for electric meters or gas meters. For some reason, you couldn't do it, so they had passed a law to allow this. And so Western Resource Advocates is working with a consultant to develop a best practices, set of best practices for these kind of things that the Colorado Energy Office will be helping implement as well. And so it's kind of just lay it out, saying this is how you should do this, and then it just basically provides more assurance to local utilities if they want to switch over to smart metering. They can use these best practices and do a performance contracting methodology versus trying to fund it on their own right away. It gets funded. There's a chunk of money up front, and then it helps it kind of take some of the guesswork and the risk out of it as well. Okay. And last but not least, another one from Western Resource Advocates, conservation-oriented tap fees and guide and workshop for $19,090. Oh, sorry, 37F was for $52,500, and 37G is for $19,090. And this is, again, kind of working on the tap fee idea that ties directly into water rates and land use planning, and how you develop conservation-oriented tap fees, where you can give incentives for developments, new subdivisions that go above and beyond of maybe a certain efficiency level, and allows you to build that into the tap fee so you can get an incentive up front for the developer. So they're going to create a guidebook for that. They've done one workshop before in the past, and it had a really great response, and people really wanted more information on this. So they're going to do the guidebook and a workshop with this money. And it's one of the other ones that's very much a next frontier that probably should be a basic best practice. You can tie these things, but you also have a better idea of how much water, how much demand you're actually going to be using through these structured tap fees. And it really helps you assess new demands in your new developments. So with that, I think that's all I've got. And if we wanted to have anybody come up, I think Bob's the only one that came for mine. So,
questions for Kevin? Bob, would you like to address the board again? State your name and who you are.
Bob Howie with Irrigation Analysis, and this is for the Meadows neighborhood company. grant request. And really the kind of exciting thing is it's a very large community, very large water user within town of Castle Rock. And the general manager of the Meadows Neighborhood Company is very motivated and interested, as is their board and is the city, so or the town. So it's a very exciting project, and it's an integrated project. So it's not just, we're not just doing efficiency evaluations, but we're doing efficiency evaluations and then kind of the low cost, high impact changes to the system that we're going to be able to do within the grant, as well as we are going to be doing remote system monitoring and management of the system, which is another area where you can have a very efficient system, but if nobody's paying attention to it or it's being neglected or abused, then water gets lost and the whole thing runs amok and all the good work goes for naught. So that's part of it. And then also a third component is turf conversion of about 50,000 square feet from high use bluegrass to low use, either native or a xeriscape type mulch kind of combination. So pretty exciting and kind of excited. We're excited to be involved with a client that wants to move forward on this kind of thing and is really serious and integrating multiple facets. So anyway, and ALCC, Associated Landscape Contractors of Colorado, are very interested in kind of publishing the results and seeing what happens as well. So anyway, any questions?
Bob, any questions for Bob? All right, thank you. So we have a staff recommendation. Director Goebel.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. If there's no further discussion, I move to approve staff recommendation on agenda items. I guess it's all one. So agenda item 37.
And moved by Director Goebel, second by Director Gallagher, that we approve staff recommendation on agenda item 37. That's A through G. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Coming out of this, I'd just like to say thank you to the staff. This was on top of what you already do, and you did the first round of these water implementation plan grants, and you did a really good job. You're very thorough. Sometimes I'm sure people out in the audience or even listening over the internet, they wonder maybe why we don't ask as many questions as they maybe think we should. But that's just because we're so well informed, and it's because of the staff, the way that you put out your memos and everything, that we're already prepared and we have most of our questions answered. So I just want to thank the staff for their work on this first round, and that'll lead us into the next one, which is the next round. Lauren.
Yes, this is Lauren Riss with CWCB staff, and thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. I was going to mention that as well. I think, as we'll discuss in this agenda item, this was our first time at putting together this grant program, really start from scratch, using existing staff. We didn't get any extra FTE to implement a whole new program, and it was, I think, super successful in the end, but it wasn't without a lot of hard work and head scratching sometimes by the staff. So thanks to everyone. So this agenda item is the last, number 38, to talk about the water plan grant process for this next fiscal year for 18-19. So the 2018 projects bill, which was Senate Bill 218, that passed out of both chambers, and I think we're still waiting for a signature from the governor, but don't anticipate any problems with that. That bill included $7 million this year to continue the water plan grant program for a second year. There were some changes made to the funding categories that I want to remind you of. We combined the storage and the supply and demand category for $3 million, and that is to facilitate the development of additional storage, artificial recharge, and dredging existing reservoirs to restore full decreed storage capacity for multi-beneficial projects, and to those projects identified in basin implementation plans to address the water supply and demand gap. We have $1 million to provide technical assistance, project or program funding for agricultural projects, $1 million to implement long-term strategies for conservation, land use, and drought planning, $500,000 for grants for water education, outreach, and innovation efforts, and then $1.5 million for environment and recreation projects. So I wanted to take a a moment and have a discussion with the board about some lessons learned after taking stock of this first prior year, current fiscal year's grant program. And I think, as we just covered, you're all well aware that the way we went about it this first year made a lot of sense to have a 2 board meeting review process so that we really kind of got a handle on the projects that we were receiving and making sure that we were asking the right questions and really giving a lot of thought and consideration to the applications that came in. I think there were a couple of things that we learned from that. One is that took up a total of 6 board meetings of time to go through all of that. And I think, again, that was appropriate, but it was a lot of a time on the agenda. It also, just in terms of the staff perspective, there was a lot to juggle. Many projects in multiple stages of initial consideration versus final consideration versus applications coming in. And I think everyone did a really spectacular job of keeping all those balls in the air, but it was a lot to keep track of. And then, of course, from the applicant's perspective, we dealt with some questions about, we want to make sure that we're present and available to answer questions, but we're not sure what meeting to come into for that. Should we come in for the first meeting or the last meeting? And so that was a little bit tricky. So based on those observations, we're recommending some changes to this next round of funding. And this is really a kind of a load of a staff recommendation here, but we can talk through it carefully. And again, this is really meant to streamline and clarify the application requirements and the schedule moving forward. So one of the recommendations that we decided to put forward was to reduce the number of rounds from 3 to 2. So as you are aware, the previous schedule was we had an August deadline, an October deadline, and a February deadline, with then 2 meetings that followed each of those deadlines for board consideration and then final review. So we're recommending that be reduced to an August 1 application deadline and a February 1 application deadline. And then in order to make those applications publicly available, which is part of what we were trying to achieve this first round and having a 2 board meeting process, we're proposing that then we make those applications available on the CWCB website for public consideration and roundtable consideration. So the staff will do an initial review of those, maybe ask any questions of the applicants that seem to just not fit in the right category, or just make sure that what we're putting out there is ready for public consumption. So post those after a month, and then have one final board approval meeting, with, of course, the option that the board, as with any agenda item, can elect to postpone a decision on that. So then what that would look like in terms of schedule, and this is all highlighted in your board memo, would be an August deadline, posting applications in September, final board approval in November. And then the second round would be February deadline, applications posted in March, and then final approval in May. So that covers the first and second bullets. Actually, that covers the first 3 bullets. Hooray! So that's kind of the meat of the scheduling revisions that we're proposing. And then the final item there is one that I think we've really struggled with as staff, and that is to find the appropriate role in this grant process of the basin roundtables, and wanting to recognize the really important local input that I think we want to incorporate into this grant program, while also distinguishing that this is a program that's different from others that we operate, like the WSRF, where roundtables are really front and center and have developed a whole process around that. So the recommendation that was initially in my board memo was an idea that we would ask the roundtables, or actually require the roundtables to sign off that what is in the application as far as the project meeting the goals of the basin implementation plan and the water plan, the roundtables affirm that. And we did that in part to address some confusion that was coming from the roundtables. In the current application, we say roundtable letters are encouraged but not required. we were finding we were getting a lot of questions about what that meant and what would happen if they didn't send a letter versus how we used a letter if they did send one in, and did they need to vote, and so forth and so on. And so we were trying to be responsive to that consideration while also making this a distinct program. However, based on some additional conversations that we had on the staff side after putting this memo out a couple weeks ago and having some individual conversations in the hallways with some of you, I would like to propose an amended recommendation, which is what you see on the screen in red, and I'll just read it so that the folks on the phone and in the audience can hear. And that is, in the grant guidelines, clarify that letters from the Basin Roundtables that provide information about how the project aligns with the applicable BIP and water plan goals are welcome. Any letters received will be included in the packet of information reviewed by the staff and the board. And this is meant to provide a little bit of additional specificity as to the kind of information that we're looking for in letters coming from the roundtables, and then trying to address this question of how the letters will be used. I am quite open to having the conversation here with you all and any tweaking or additions or subtractions that you would suggest to that. But that's kind of where we were trying to go and be responsive. So with that, I'll open it up to any discussion or questions from the board.
Any questions for Lauren or Director Dutton?
Lauren, going back to your timeline, so it looks like that, so having the applications due on August and presented to the board in November, but on the web by September, it looks to me like that coincides very closely with the WSRF statewide applications where they're due in August and then available for the board review in September. So just wondering if our goal is to try to keep this valuable program but reduce some of the strain on staff, if maybe it would be better to have the grants due September 1st and available online in October so that staff aren't working through as many applications. Or I just wondered if you guys had talked about that. And
we did talk about that. Thank you, Director Hutton. We did talk about that quite a bit. And I think while it's true that I think we don't want CWCB staff to just be constantly churning through grant applications for various programs, at some point it's a sort of a quantity issue, and we want to make sure that we have enough time to give applications the due thought and consideration. So I'm going to look back at Greg, since he's the guy in charge of WSRF, but that was part of our consideration in making this timeline. The deadlines coincide, but of course that's the application burden then is on the applicant, not so much on staff. So I think giving us a couple of months of review time is a good thing.
I do think there's some benefit also to seeing all the grant applications that come in for similar types of money at the same time, so we can see what's coming in and look at everything as a whole picture. So there's a benefit to it also. I also wanted to reiterate one thing that Lauren mentioned, but I wanted to make sure the board heard it loud and clear, that there is those timelines set out, but on that third bullet it says if the board determines that they need additional time, those grants can be held over one board meeting. And so if there is a specific project, they wouldn't have to push out to the next cycle. They could be held over for one board meeting. So I think that's an important thing to recognize.
All right. Thank you, Director Mitchell. Great.
Greg Johnson, CWCB staff. Just wanted to mention that that is a concern, but we also have had a number of roundtables that are actually changing their cycle to basically match the statewide WSRF approval. So to really just hit the September and March meetings, which also has those same implications of getting a higher volume just twice a year. And there's pros and cons. So yeah, I think we will be more busy in some respects, but I think there's some benefits from the competition standpoint, and getting good applications and knowing what's in front of us. And roundtables, of course, can do what they want to do with that process. So we're just moving forward.
Further. Yeah, go ahead, Director Hawkins.
And this is for Lauren. I'm a little bit of a disadvantage because I can't see the revision to that recommendation. Did I hear that we now are looking for letters of support
Yes, Director Hawkins, I'm sorry about that. Eric is going to email you the slide. So the current guidelines say that letters from the roundtables are encouraged but not required. And the staff recommendation, sorry, it's on the computer. The staff recommendation that I'm proposing is that that letters from the roundtables are welcome, with the added specificity that information that they can provide that how a project aligns with the applicable BIP and the water plan goals would be most helpful. So we are still recommending that I guess letters from roundtables are voluntary and not required, although I think that's up for discussion as well if the board has different thoughts about that. Excuse me, but rather than having a sort of a binary thumbs up or thumbs down that was in the original board memo is what we are amending.
Okay, so we're not going to use a form, we're going to
Correct.
use a letter?
Correct.
Okay, thanks. I just make sure I understood that.
Yes.
I think as long as we are giving the roundtable an opportunity to give input, that will work.
Thank you, Director Hawkins. Director Trick.
My question was along the same lines, and I think you already answered it, but I just want to clarify. So I guess if the applicant is unable to get a letter of support from a roundtable, then in lieu of that, then the applicant fills out this form with the project goals and how they align?
No, so that recommendation entirely would go away. In your board memo, the fourth bullet there, where it says in lieu of a letter of support from Basin Roundtables.
Right.
What I'm recommending is that the language in red on the slide replace that.
Sorry, I'm just trying to clarify what's replacing what. So again,
the red up there replaces the four here.
Right. So then explain to me what happens. What does the applicant do if they cannot get a letter from the roundtable, or if the roundtable actually opposes their project?
Then there would be no letter, or there would be a letter stating their opposition or concern.
And then no further step for the applicant to take at that point. They just submit their own.
Correct.
Director Wells.
As part of the application, doesn't the applicant have to explain how their proposal aligns with the state water plan?
Yes, they do.
So I think the applicant
yes.
does it in their application without a separate form.
Right, just not as in this order. Yeah. Okay.
Director Gallagher.
That same comment, I would say that we're not asking the roundtables to opine on this, how this meets the water plan. We want them to look at what does it address the goals of the BIP.
Right. Although I think if they have some insight or some thought that they would like to provide as to a specific action or goal in the water plan that they believe this project meets, I think we would welcome that as well. But I think from my perspective, what's most useful in coming from the roundtables is their expert knowledge in the basin implementation plan. Yeah.
Well, I don't care. You could leave in the water plan as well. It invites at least their comments on it. Thank you. And I think opening it up and encouraging these letters is a good thing. Requiring them and making it a binary choices and making putting the roundtable in as a gatekeeper rather than someone that an entity that can actually opine on it, I think is a better situation. Thank you.
Further discussion. All right, you have a staff recommendation. What is the board's pleasure? Director Wells.
There is a staff recommendation, and I would move the staff recommendation for changes to the process as described with the new language on the fourth bullet.
Moved by Director Wells, seconded by Director Anderson, that we approve staff recommendation with the amendment, replacement of bullet 4. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we shall proceed to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right.
Mr. Chairman, can I just
Yes.
thank the board for your support of this program? And as the last agenda item, I just wanted to leave you, if you decide to float the Arkansas this afternoon, make sure to bring your cat.
All right. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, directors and staff, for your patience and your hard work. And I hope directors Trick and Anderson, you'll come back to the next meeting.
Maybe there's a possibility.